Okay, hi everyone. So hello and welcome to our pre-dental webinar for SHPEP alums, where we'll spend a little bit of time talking about planning for a stress-free ADEA AADSAS application. So my name is Dr. Kristen Wong. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the co-deputy director of SHPEP and the director of inclusive programs and services at ADEA, the American Dental Education Association. I'm also a proud alum of SHPEP. So I participated in the program in one of its earlier iterations in the summer after my first year as a pre-med undergrad student at the University of Arizona. So SHPEP and myself, we go way back. But part of my role here at ADEA now, it focuses on SHPEP alumni engagement. And so that includes our 2 alumni scholarships and our National Alumni Advisory Board, to name a few. And this webinar itself is another example of how we support program alums. So we have over 30,000 program alums, and I'm not sure if you all know that, but that's a lot of people. And so there's certainly a wealth of knowledge and resources available within our alumni community that help us to create and sustain pathways for careers in the health professions. It also helps to create and sustain pathways for
It's the
careers.
hospital rooms.
And
Mhm.
thanks for careers in the health professions, as well as in graduate programs and other fields as well. And so this webinar is a collaborative effort within ADEA, where I've had the privilege to work with my colleague, Elizabeth Johnson, to coordinate this event. So I'll turn it over to Elizabeth so she can briefly introduce herself, but she's also going to be in the background running tech for this webinar.
Hi, thanks, Kristen, very much. I'm delighted to be here with everyone today. I'm Elizabeth Johnson, the Director of Recruitment for ADEA Application Services. So I've been with ADEA for almost 10 years, which is a long time when you say that. But my role here at ADEA is really to kind of recruit new dental students into the, new students into the profession. So, we work closely with advisors and, pre-dental clubs and, put on events. If you're familiar with the ADEA Go Dental, recruitment event or the ADEA Go Dental virtual fair, if you attended any of those in the past, those are events that my department puts on. And I'm delighted to be, working with Kristen and ADI to really put this on for SHPEP alums. Frankly, I wish we had been doing this for a lot longer. So I'm really excited we're, jump starting this, which I think we'll be doing, in the coming years. So I'm delighted to be here with you today. And, my colleague Chonté, who you'll hear from about the application, works in my department. So we're the Office of Educational Services. So again, I'm delighted to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Great, thanks, Liz. And so what we'll do next is we'll go over the agenda for this webinar to give you an idea about what we have planned. So in a few moments, like Liz said, our colleague Chonté will provide a presentation about the ADEA AADSAS application process. So she'll provide an overview of what that looks like. Then we'll have a panel of first-year students who will share their experiences with you all about how they completed their dental school applications. And then lastly, we'll have a little bit of time left for Q&A. So a little bit about logistics for this webinar. You can leave your camera on or you can have it off during this webinar, but please make sure to have your sound off so that way it's not distracting for our speakers. And the chat box is available for you. So you can post your questions in there that you may have for Chonté or for our student panelists. But we ask that you please refrain from having side conversations in that chat box just so that we are able to identify the questions in there more easily. And so it's also less distracting for our presenters and audience members. And then we have some questions for the student panelists, but any questions that you all may have that you put in that chat box, we'll try to address some of them at the end after Chonté presents and then after our student panelists speak as well. If you have any tech-related questions or issues, please message Elizabeth Johnson directly so you can find her in the participants list and message her that way. So I will go ahead now and turn it over to my colleague Chonté James, who's the director of the Predoctoral Application Service at ADEA. And she is a Maryland native with over 30 years of experience supporting dental education and has been instrumental in connecting and giving presentations to pre-dental students, health professions advisors, and admissions representatives at dental schools across the United States and Canada. So Chonté is here to tell us what we need to know about the ADEA AADSAS application process. So Chonté.
Thank you, Krista. All right, welcome everyone. I am
Another ice cookie.
Can you see my screen?
Also, I don't know if it was both,
Yes.
Yes.
but I think I
Okay.
saw Davy in that class.
All right. So hello, everyone. My name is Chonté James. I am the director of Predoctoral Application Service. Like Kristen said, I've been working at ADEA over 30 years and had the opportunity to speak with so many pre-dental students that are interested in applying to dental school. I know you've heard a little bit about it's stressful to apply to dental school, and it could be a little stressful. So today I'm going to spend some time to help eliminate some of that stress. Before I get started, I can't see everybody, and maybe Kristen and Liz, you can see them. I'm just interested to know how many of you are applying this cycle by a raise of hands. Ooh, yes. I like that. All right. So let's see if I can advance to the next screen, which I'm having a problem doing. All right. This should have been the next one. My apologies. So applying to dental school is like taking a journey, like going on a road trip, right? You know, what are the steps that you need to do to prepare to go on a road trip? What are the steps you need to do to apply to dental school? When you're applying to dental schools, you always want to remember your why. Why are you applying to dental school? You know, you always want to remember that. You want to know your timeline. You know, what is your timeline? When is the ADEA AADSAS application open? You know, just like you go on a journey, you want to know the timeline of where you're going, how you're going to get there. So you got to create a timeline. You also want to identify your resources. Find out all these, there's so many different resources out there for you, which I'm going to talk about a little bit in my presentation. And also, you want to get ready for the ADEA AADSAS application, which opens on May 14th. So it could be a little stressful, so make sure you be prepared. And as you prepare, always have that in the back of your mind of why you are applying to dental schools. There will be some bumps in the road. I must say that. If you don't experience them, that's great. But if there are some bumps in the road, be prepared for it and keep going. Okay. So here is the dashboard of the ADEA AADSAS application. Like I mentioned earlier, it opens on May 14th and applicants can submit on June 14th. And the reason why there's a 3-week lag time is to give you time to complete your application so you don't feel like you're being rushed, like you're trying to beat everybody to submit their application. So we want you to take your time to complete the application. The application fee is $264. For the first dental school designation, and each designation after that is $115. So the dashboard is broken into tabs and panels, right? Along the top of the application are the main navigations, right? You have your add program, submit application, and you check status. On the left side of the dashboard is your notification, like anytime that we need to reach out to you, we'll be sending you email communications, and that email communication notification will appear in your notification section. So make sure you always check the status of your application. In the center of the dashboard, you'll see 4 quadrants. You have the personal information, academic history, supporting information, and the program material section, which I will go through momentarily. I do want to mention at that top right corner where you see check status, always look at that, because there you will find your decision status that the dental school has made. You'll see your application status, like where the progress is for us reviewing your application. And you have the ability to download your application. So make sure you always check the status of your application. Right now we have 74 participating dental schools, with 5 of them being Canadian dental schools. And this year we have 3 new dental schools joining us. So I'm excited about that. And they are Anna G. Mendez, Northeast Ohio Medical University, and Pacific Northwest. Now, like I said, the application opens on May 14th. Those schools will not join until later on, maybe in August, but just want to let you know that those schools will be joining us in this application cycle. So here's the first quadrant of the personal information, right? It has 8 sections. I only listed a couple on the right side, but there are 8 sections to complete, which ADEA is asking for you. They're asking for your biographical information. This is very important, so you want to make sure that you provide the right information. And there's a criminal history section at the bottom, so make sure you be honest about that if you had any issues over the last few years. So those are the questions that you would have to answer in that whole biographical personal information section. Okay, so this is your second quadrant, which is your academic history section. Now, this has 4 parts of the application that you have to complete. Your colleges and university attendant, high school information, transcripts, and standard tests is what you have to complete in this section. So I do want to mention that we have to have all of your transcripts in order to begin the verification process. So all transcripts must be submitted to AADSAS in order to begin the verification process for applying to dental school. So just to talk to you about the dental admissions test, the DAT is administered by the American Dental Association, not ADEA, because some applicants get confused about that. So there are 4 main sections of the DAT section. You have your natural sciences section, but from my understanding, in that section, you have your biology, general chemistry, organic chemistry questions, which is part of that. And I do want to mention that in the 4 main sections, there are multiple choice questions in this whole DAT section of the testing. Then you have your perceptual ability, which is comprised of 6 subsets. You have your reading comprehension, which is 3 reading passages on various topics that they want you to cover. So it would be like your ability to read, comprehend, and analyze basic scientific information. So I just want to let you know about that. And then last but not least, your quantitative reasoning, which has about 40 questions in there. So the test takes about 4.5 hours. And during this testing time, it includes like your break, your tutorial, and then they'll ask you to complete a test survey. To take the test is $525. And they do offer a fee waiver program. So anyone that's qualified for a fee waiver, please make sure you go onto their website and get that information. Most students complete the DAT around their 2nd or 3rd year in college. The test is offered year-round. The scoring for this runs between 1 to 30. So these are scores and not percentile. So make sure that you study for taking the DAT. So I've spoken to so many applicants about how do you prepare to apply for the DATs. And these are some of the things, these are some of the tools that they offer. They talked about the praxis test, the reference test, prometric online tutorial. And so the dental school students said, well, I use DAT Cracker to help me study. I use DAT Bootcamp or DAT Booster or Kaplan. So I have the phone number down if you need to reach out to the American Dental Association. We have dental students here today to talk a little bit about their experience as far as taking the DAT. So this is the other quadrant that I want to talk about, the supporting information quadrant. This quadrant, you would have to enter, you have to provide your letters of evaluation, list your work experience, achievements. They have a few questions about your licenses and your personal statement. So make sure you go through that and enter in all of the information that is necessary. Your letters of recommendation, just want to talk a little bit about that. So you have to submit, well, you don't have to, but you can submit up to 4 individual letters of evaluation. Each letter must be written by one person. And you can either submit 4 individual letters or you can submit 1 committee letter, right? And you want to make sure that you monitor the status of your application at all times. What I recommend you to do is to identify a letter writer that knows you. Get a chance to know that letter writer. You want to make sure that they can write a strong letter of recommendation on your behalf. Make sure you reach out to the letter writer at least 30 days in advance, because remember, they are writing other letters as well. So you want to reach out to them as soon as possible. And after they submit their letter of recommendation on behalf, make sure you send them a thank you thank you email. They would really appreciate that. So I also spoke to some students because I wanted to get their perspective on a personal statement. And so this is what they told me. Write a compelling personal statement. Schools appreciate your uniqueness. Stay true to yourself. Share your life story and why you are interested in the profession and what motivates you. So those are some of the questions that you could talk to dental students about today. I'm sure there are other comments they want to make, but make sure you write a good personal statement. So here's the last quadrant of the program material section. This is quadrant 4. In this section, in the application, we ask dental school admission officers to enter all their information in here about their school, which is we consider as their home branding. And so there are other questions that the schools will ask you outside of the ADEA AADSAS application. Now, some schools may ask up to 15 questions, so you got to be prepared to answer those questions. You got to look at the prerequisites. All schools have different prerequisites that they're looking for. So you're going to have to match the coursework with what you have. So as you navigate through that whole section, you will see that information. And then they may be asking you for some additional documents as well. So these are the 4 main parts to complete the ADEA AADSAS application. And what makes your applications complete is that you must create an account and you must submit your application and you must send in all of the transcripts to begin the verification process. And it may take up to 2 to 3 weeks before your application is shared with the other dental schools. And I do want to mention that we will process your application without your letters of evaluations. So when those letters come in, we will send those letters out to the schools as soon as they come in, but it will not hold up your application. And I want to talk about the DAT too, because the DAT is self-reported, of course. And so the ADA will send your DAT scores to ADEA. And once that information is available, it will be uploaded in the application. So the DAT and the letters of evaluation will not hold up your application. We get that question a lot, so I do want to mention it here today. So this is what you call the applicant summary. This is a PDF that the dental schools will receive once your application is ready, verified, and complete. Well, verified. And so in the experience section, there are sections and questions in there where you can highlight your most important part of your work experience. So you may have about 6 or 7 different work experience, but they want you to highlight the most important work experience that you want them to see in your cover letter. So the applicant summary is pretty much a snapshot. So they'll look at that document, go through it, and see what's, the courses that you've taken. They look at your academic history, they'll look at your supporting information, but you want to pull those important ones out so they can say, okay, this applicant worked at this location. Not saying that they're not going to look at your entire application, but they definitely want that to stand out, to highlight your experience. Okay, so this is where this is very important that you need to check the status of your applications at all times. You can check to see if we received your transcripts. You can check to see if we received your letters of evaluations. It's always good to check that letters of evaluation, because sometimes evaluators get so bogged down with so much work that they may tend to forget. So you always want to keep an eye on that. You also want to keep an eye on to make sure that we have all of your transcripts, because if we do not, your application will not be moved forward. And so in the process where you are working on the academic history section, make sure that you have your unofficial transcript with you while you're completing your application, and verify that what's on your transcript is what you put on your AADSAS application. In the event that, say like you've entered your coursework and you forgot to put the grades in there, ADEA AADSAS will reach out to you and we will return your application to you, and we'll give you time for you to complete it. But you want to complete it before the application closes, which is February 7th. And if you wait after that, then we cannot process your application. So when I talked about statuses, these are like the 4 main statuses that you will see. You will see in progress, which means we started your application, you have not submitted your application. Receive means you submitted the application, but waiting for the transcripts to begin the verification. Complete is transcripts, all the transcripts are received from all the colleges and universities, and we are ready for verification process. And then verified means that your application has been verified and your GPA calculations are available for the schools to see. So ADEA has some really, really great resources. We have the ADEA Go Dental, which I'm sure most of you know about. I'm sure you've been on our website to see all those beautiful videos from the dental students. If you have not, there's the URL. We have the ADEA AADSAS Help Center, which is part of the ADEA AADSAS application. So you want to make sure that you read the instructions clearly before completing the ADEA AADSAS application. As a matter of fact, you can look at the Help Center now before we're open on May 14th. We have the ADEA Official Guide to Dental School, which is $35, which have great information about all the dental schools' mission, prerequisites, and detailed information about their school and what they're looking for. We have the ADEA Go Dental Virtual Fair that's coming up on May 21st. I hope you've registered. It's a free online event. Registration is already open, so if you haven't done so, please make sure you register for that. And of course, we have the ADEA AADSAS Fee Assistance Program, which is available for students that's having some extreme financial hardship. That opens up in May 14th. Make sure you read the instructions about this fee assistance program. You will receive a total of $494 for ADEA AADSAS if you are approved for the fee assistance program. And I provided the links if you have any questions about that. Here are a few tips for a successful AADSAS application. Make sure you read your help center. Make sure you apply early. The application cycle closes on February 7th. Make sure you have enough shadowing hours. Write a great personal statement. I do want to mention that when you go into the program material section and look at the schools that you're interested in applying to, they will tell you how many hours of experience that they're looking for. So make sure you look at that. Make sure you check your grammar and spelling before hit submit. I know we've received some calls from applicants that made some mistakes in their personal statement, and we just cannot, resend your application to you. So make sure you check on that. Have an advisor check, have a friend check on your personal statement, but you definitely want to check that. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, make sure you send all official transcripts to ADEA AADSAS so we can begin your application process verification and monitor your application status. So here's some important dates. Mentioned a few of these. We open next week. So submission is on June 4th. And you see 2 academic update periods. We have one in August, which begins August 14th and ends September 30th. And then we have another one that opens on December 2nd, which ends February 7th, my apologies. And so what this is, it gives you the option to, some applicants will have courses that they are in progress of taking or they're planning to take. So this gives you the ability to update your courses, provide your grades, and of course your credit hours that you receive for those courses. And so I do want to mention that when this academic update opens, we will send an email message out to everyone to let them know that it is open. When it's open and you are entering your grades, you must send official transcripts in to begin the verification process. Other than that, if you do not, your application will not be verified. So make sure you take that extra step to send that transcript into ADEA AADSAS. And on December 13th is a notification date. That's when dental schools reach out to applicants and send acceptance notification out. So be aware of that. And then, of course, I've mentioned earlier that the application cycle closes on February 7th. So thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions, as far as you can reach out to our customer service team. The number is there, 617-612-2045, or feel free to email them. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks so much, Chonté, for providing such an informative overview. I'm sure I learned some things as well as our audience, and so thank you for providing additional insight on what the application process involves. So now we'll turn it over to our first year student panelists. I have some questions prepared to ask of them, and then we'll have some time at the end to address some of the questions that we have in the chat box. But first off, I wanted to give them a chance to introduce themselves. And so I'll go ahead and call on Cameron first. If you could introduce yourself, please.
How you guys doing? My name is Cameron Andrews. My pronouns is he, him. I'm from Los Angeles, California. I went to undergrad at Hampton University, that's in Virginia. I graduated in 2021 with a degree in biology. I did SHPEP at UCLA in 2019. I'm currently attending Howard University College of Dentistry. I just finished my first year. I decided to choose Howard after I did a visit there. I want to say the year before my application cycle, and the students there just felt like family, and it made me feel like I was at home. So it made the decision a lot easy. My first year, I would say it was very hectic. You know, it's a lot of information to process. I didn't even know I can process that much information in a short amount of time, and I would say it's definitely hard, definitely hard.
Thanks, Cameron. So Rachel?
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Kulchar. I use she, her pronouns. I'm from San Diego, California. I went to Princeton, graduated last year, major chemistry, minor global health and health policy, and material science and engineering. I also did SHPEP at UCLA in 2021. I'm doing a DDS PhD at UCLA. I like UCLA because it's pass fail. It's like small class size, but not too small. And I wanted to live in a city, and it's close to home. And I am currently doing so I start with PhD, and at UCLA, I'm doing like a hybrid PhD with the NIH in UCLA. So I'm in Maryland right now too. Same with Cameron.
Great, thank you. And Michael?
Yeah. In South Texas, in McAllen. I went to Texas.
I think we're having trouble hearing you, Michael. It's going in and out.
Can
you hear me now?
Yeah, much better. Thank you.
So I'll start over. Okay, my name is Michael Andavazo. I use he, him pronouns. I grew up in McAllen, Texas. I went to Texas A&M for undergrad, where I studied biomedical sciences with a minor in public health. We call it SHPEP. I did SHPEP in 2020 at UT Health Houston. I am now at UT Health Houston for dental school, just finished my first year. And I'd say I picked Houston because one, it's in a big city. Its cost of attendance was relatively lower compared to other institutions. And the students of the other schools I visited seemed a lot less stressed.
Yeah, and Rachel and Michael, I don't know if you want to share too like a 1 or 2 sentence recap of how your first year has been.
Well, I'm doing so I starting with PhD, and I like research, so it's been pretty good. But it's tough to have to finish. So like how it's structured is it's like a 7-year program, but some schools it's 8 years, and so you have to finish your PhD in 3 years. But usually a PhD takes like 5-6 years, so it's really quick. So it's a lot, but it's been cool.
For my program, I would say it just feels really fast paced, but I think that's just the way it goes. I'm on break right now, so I feel a lot better, but overall, I was happy with my first year.
Great, thanks. So the first question I have for you all is about what you did after SHPEP or SHPEP. So if you could tell us a little about the steps you took once you finished the program. So in other words, what was your application timeline like after the program? What did you do? How did you prepare? What did that look like in terms of your experience? Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
Okay, I'll go. So I'm from Texas, and the Texas schools we use a different application software called TMDSAS. I forget what it stands for, but I'm assuming it's similar to ADEA Pass or whatever it's called. But in our program, we kind of finished our whole application, not like in the actual software, but they helped guide us through like all the different questions and help us formulate different answers and yeah, like personal statements. So I feel as if I kind of finished my application during SHPEP and then touched it up once like third year application time started. I don't know if every program's the same, but I felt SHPEP was really helpful in that sense. And you guys can talk too.
For me, I was in SHPEP after my sophomore year, so I still had 2 more years of school left. So what I did was I stayed in contact with some of the advisors of SHPEP. I know Rachel, you might know what's his name, Dr. Hewlett. So I stayed in contact with Dr. Hewlett. You know, sent him my personal statements, asked him how my grades were, things and such like that. And then for me, I took 2 gap years after dental school. So what I did in those gap years, I made sure I stayed shadowing. I did not do a master's program. And I just worked locally and just kept busy. And then also I was, like I said, I was visiting dental schools. So it's all about how you maintain and stay in the field in those gap years so you're not losing yourself, I should say.
Yeah, so for me, I also did SHPEP after my sophomore year, so I also had 2 more years of school. But I did to stay in contact with like the mentors of the program, and something that was really cool was like Dr. Hewlett and Dr. Lee was another one of my like mentors of the program. They both interviewed me at UCLA and they like knew me, so that's something that I thought was nice. But then I also just like I worked full time during like the end of my junior year and senior year. So I did that and then shadowing as well.
Okay, so then the next question ties into it. So it's a two-parter. So what is one thing, looking back, what is one thing you're glad that you did? And then what is one thing that you wish you would have done, or maybe would have done differently, either before or during your application process? So one thing you're glad you did, and one thing you would have done, wish you would have done, or would have done differently.
Something I'm glad I did was I started my personal statement in like January, I think. And I would meet with my school's writing center and they would edit my statements. And so by the June like time to start submitting, I submitted. So that was something that I'm glad I did. Something that I wasn't glad I did, and I still like do it, is I was really like stressed during the whole process. And so there would be times where I'd be like, oh, I just wish I could skip forward a year and just like lose this year of my life because I was so stressed out. And I feel like it's all part of the journey and just like, I don't know, everything like grows you into the person you are. So that's something that I'm still working on, but that's something I wish I could have done differently.
I would say for myself, I'm glad I took those 2 gap years. I did feel like I needed a break from school. And when I came in as August, I felt refreshed going back to school. One thing I'm not glad I did was waiting to get those letter recommendations. So for me, I ended school during COVID. So most of the teachers I had didn't really see my face. So getting those letter recommendations were hard, but it all worked out at the end. But for you guys, I would stay on top of getting those letter recommendations because those teachers move on their time, and you don't want to push your application back waiting on those letters.
Okay. Similar to Rachel, one thing I was really glad I did is I felt like this was something I was really proactive about, especially with my writing center, because I think taking a lot of science classes, I just forget how to write sometimes. So I think it's really nice to be showing it to people who know how to write. And yeah, so I was really glad I went to the writing center a lot. And something I wish I would have done, honestly, I wish I would have taken a gap year just because I felt it would be nice to have a break from school for a little bit and maybe just live life a bit between school. But I mean, it's fine. I'll like finish earlier than I would if I hadn't taken it, if I did take a gap year. So
Yeah, I think, I mean, that's a good point. I think taking a gap year has trade-offs too. So it's always, best to think about what works for an individual and their circumstances and their own personal timeline. But we do have a question that I wanted to throw in here for Cameron, since we were talking about gap years. So an audience member is wondering, what did you do during your gap years? What did that look like for you to take that time?
So what I did was most so it's not really a gap year because you're still studying for the DAT. So that's the thing about the gap year. You're still prepping for dental school. It's like a subset of school. Like I'm still studying every day, trying to get those letter recommendations. I'm still shadowing. I'm doing everything to boost up my application. I'm volunteering and doing things such like that. And also I worked at Nike for 2 years too. So like when I wasn't studying for the DAT, I was working. So that's what you can do. I know some people they travel and things like that, but for me, it was just making sure my application was all right in that year. Well, that was 2 years, if that helps you out.
Mhm. So the next question I have for you all is, what did you do to make your application process successful and essentially stress-free? The title of our webinar is how to make that process stress-free. So what did you do to do that for yourself? Or, in Rachel's retrospect too, what could you have done to make it stress-free for yourself a little bit more looking back?
So what I would say do, I didn't do it, but what I would say for you guys to do is look at, it opens up May 14th, so take advantage of that. I would, if I was in you guys' shoes, I'll knock out all those supplementary applications before I start studying for the DAT because those applications come at you quick, and those questions do become a lot because each school is asking their own individual questions. So you might end up with 20 different essay questions within different schools, and that starts to take a toll on you along with studying for the DAT. So if you can knock that out before you start studying for the DAT, it can ease your mind a little bit about where you're allocating time, and also format a schedule of what you want to get done every single day and make sure you're hitting those things every single day. So it makes the process easier.
I think to make it a less stressful time when doing your application, I think would like this might not be helpful for the people applying right now, but like starting early, like early timeline and like really preparing yourself as an applicant by like volunteering and like being involved and like maybe getting a job if you can or playing a sport, things like that. I think that makes it easier once you actually get into application time. It's like you have a lot more to talk about just because you can think back on experiences and keeping a log of things like that. So I think like if there are any like first or second years, just like really planning out your timeline to be able to take your DAT before application time. So you're not trying to do both of those at once. But yeah, that's my advice.
For me, I think stress comes out from a lack of control. And so for parts of the application that we don't have control over necessarily, like letters of recommendation, something that I did that made me feel a lot better was I think the like AMCAS, which is the medical application cycle, they have like a list of 7 traits that every like medical student should have. And so I like went through for the letter writers and I made them like a cheat sheet. And I was like, you like to make sure all the 4 letters or whatever talked about some different aspect of me. And I would write like a story that they could talk about during their letter to make their job easier. And then it also helped them finish and write their letter so that they could submit it by the deadline. So that was something that helped me.
Great. And um, the question I have for you all too is, so as a SHPEP alum, what are one or two things that prospective applicants can do right now? And so you all kind of talked a little bit about this, but if you were to give them one or two pieces of advice of things they can do right now to better prepare themselves for the dental school application process, what would you say?
I think that starting the letter or starting the personal statement early is something that I'd really recommend. And then also, if you have time, I think getting involved in research is super cool, and it makes you stand out as an applicant. And every single interview I had, like, that was a big part of what we talked about. And I think that dental schools and want to incorporate research more, like how medical schools do. And so I think doing that can really set you apart, and having those like communication skills. And yeah.
I would just piggyback here. Make sure you get the personal statement done. Start working on that, and then start reaching out to teachers about getting a letter recommendations. That's what you can control now. So I'll start working on that.
Okay, so two things I want to say. One, piece of general advice. I was like, don't be afraid to do things outside of dentistry. I mean, of course, everyone is their own like person, and it works for each person, but I just think don't be afraid to do things outside of dentistry. You're going to be doing dentistry for the rest of your life if you get into dental school. So I just think it's okay to do something different while you're also being productive. Because yeah, if you're doing something productive, I think it shows that there's effort, commitment, and all the same values if it was also in line with dentistry. And the second thing I want to say is about research. I think research is a lot more accessible than you think. It's not just bench work. For example, in undergrad, I did archival research, which is essentially just reading a bunch of different articles and collecting themes and making your own new idea based off trends in different articles. So I think you could, if you don't have the opportunity to do maybe like traditional bench work, you could speak with your research group on campus, like whoever coordinates that, and try to see if you could get something going like that where you can make your own project. Because like Rachel was saying, I think it's a great point of topic in interviews. And yeah.
Great, thank you. And I would echo that research point too. I think as an undergraduate, I worked in a lab. I didn't do anything very fancy, but I still worked in a lab, got exposure, got experience, and it was much more accessible than I thought it was going to be. For me, it was a matter of finding out which professors needed students to work in their labs, and was able to be a part of projects that way. But talking about research, there's a question for you, Rachel, about what your research looks like now. So you said that you're at the NIH. What are you working on as part of that?
Yeah, so right now I'm I'm in a salivary gland lab, and so my project specifically right now I'm like creating a 3D organ culture of the salivary gland, but then also looking at how immune checkpoint inhibitors, which are a cancer therapy, how they impact the salivary glands. But I've been involved with research. I think like oral health research is really far encompassing, and it's not really thought about a lot. Like it could be oral transmission of viruses, how like head and neck cancer, salivary glands, like there's so many different facets, teeth, like so much, regeneration, but not even like doing dental research as an undergrad. You can do just like any type of research. And I think it's really cool. And something I do want to say too, while I'm talking about this, is that as an undergrad, because I was involved in research, I was able to attend and present at a lot of different conferences. And one of them is called AADOCR, American Association for Dental, Oral, and Craniofacial Research. And I met every single program director there of the schools I applied to. And like we talked, they knew I was applying. And that was like huge in the whole process. And it's not something undergrads normally go to. And so I would very much recommend that. I think it's super cool, and it sets you up to have connections.
Thanks. Yeah. And so another question we had was about taking school tours or visiting schools. And Cameron, you talked a little bit about this. And I know Rachel, Michael, you also participated in going to visit schools. But someone's wondering what that experience was like. How did you make that happen, navigate that experience? What types of questions did you ask when you did those school visits?
For me, I just went on the school's website and then I formed the meeting with and then what I did was I was lucky the missions director was the one who gave me my tour to school. So I was just, that was a benefit that I had. And then throughout the tour, he just told me little things about the school and I answered questions. I can't quite remember. It was like a couple years back, but then we sat down and talked and he told me tips I can use on my DAT and things and stuff like that. And I think it was very beneficial. And like I said earlier, the reason why I chose Harvard was because how open those students were that I met. Like I had plenty students just like come to me and give me tips like this is how you can do good on the DAT. If you need help with your personal statement, here's my number. So from there on, that tour is the reason why I decided to go to Howard. And that was the only school I applied to. So that tour had a lot on me.
I'll talk about that for a little bit. I think going to the school is the best way you can understand the culture, climate, just like everything about the school. I think in person is the best way to find out what the school is actually like. You get to talk to other students who are there. So if you can visit the school that you're wanting to go to, I'd highly recommend that. But yeah, I feel like when you're there, just be yourself. And I feel like that's the easiest thing to say. But for example, me, I'm not the type of person to ask questions in group settings, so I didn't do that. But yeah, I'd say just like be comfortable. Yeah. Like keep in mind that eventually, like the people who are interviewing us, I see it this way, like eventually they'll be our colleague. So I don't want to sometimes like be like too timid or like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm saying, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that like being yourself is really important because the school is accepting you or not accepting you based on like how you present yourself. And so that's how I felt. If I presented myself in a way that wasn't authentic, then I would be going to a school that I might not be a good fit for. And I don't want to not be like feel welcome or comfortable for 7 years or 4 years.
And someone's wondering about letters of recommendations. So when did you all approach individuals to get your letters of recommendation? How early was that process for you? And then how did you go about doing that?
Answer. I think I did it spring. I applied my junior going into senior year summer. So I think spring semester, I asked my professors early on if they'd be comfortable. And I feel like this is a pretty good way to phrase it. Like, would you feel comfortable writing me a letter of recommendation? And yeah, but typically like the strategy I used was going to office hours a couple times, coming with prepared questions, and then eventually just trying to ask more questions like about their research or what their path to becoming an educator was, and then eventually asking them to write a letter for me. But yeah, like spring and then apply in the summer.
I did, I started like, I think also spring, but I think like around January. And I like made that like sheet that I gave to each professor or dentist that I was hoping that they could talk about, and then applied this summer.
Yeah, I did the same thing.
Great, thank you. And Chonté, I don't know if you could answer this question. Someone's wondering, what's a good number of schools to apply to, or the typical recommended number of schools to apply to?
Sure. So the average number of dental designation is 10. So applicants applying to average of 9 or 10 dental schools.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to see, we have a lot of questions coming in. I'm trying to cover as many different topics as possible. So I think supplemental questions, that's a question that's been coming up too. I think Chonté, you may be able to talk about this. So supplemental questions for applications.
Yeah, so in the program material section, there's a question, right, section where I mentioned earlier that some schools may ask up to 15 additional questions, right? So you have to go through, and I think that's what Cameron had alluded to earlier, that you want to go through there and look at the questions that they have, because a lot of them are asking to write short essays. So be prepared. That's going to take a minute. If you imagine if you're applying to 10 schools and all those 10 schools are asking, at least putting in 7 or 8 questions with short essays in there, that's going to take some time. So you can, once the application opens, you can't see it now, of course, but once the application opens, peruse through the with that program material section, look at the dental schools questions and supplemental application. Some schools do have a additional supplemental application fee. So I want you to be aware of that as well.
Then I would say to add to that, I know somebody asked, you have some schools, you have to apply first and then they send it. So some might not all be in an application. So some might be invitation only. So you might not get it unless the school sends it to you.
That's correct. Or they will link you to their application and then you have to they'll provide a little bit more information.
And there's a question, Chonté, someone is asking about applicants entering in their notable activities in the ADEA AADSAS application. Is there a space for that?
Well, I'm a little confused on what they're asking right here. I saw that.
Mm-hmm.
Explain a little bit more what you're asking for?
Yeah, if you want to put
Come
that
on.
in the chat. Yeah, if that was your question.
Yeah, I saw that question.
Mm-hmm. Someone's asking about the supplemental questions. Do they change every year, since we were talking about that?
Well, it could change their cycles up to the schools. And most of them leave the questions as they are, but I've noticed this cycle that some of them did change their questions in that whole program material section. So make sure you read everything that's in there.
And in terms of payment, Chonté, someone's asking, do you pay as soon as you open the application, or do you pay after you submit it?
Once you're ready to, you've completed your application, and once you're ready to submit, it'll prompt you to a payment screen where you have to put your credit card information in.
Okay. Let me see. There's a lot of questions in here, so you all are sharing a lot of really good advice, and so it's prompting a lot of questions.
Kristen, do you see the one where it says what resources did you use to look up and compare different schools that you choose
Yeah.
to apply to? I think that's a good question.
That is a good question. Thanks, Chonté.
Dental students to answer.
Yeah, for students. How did you compare, look up schools and figure out which ones you wanted to narrow down to?
For me, I would say, like, if you heard Michael and Rachel say one's going to school in Houston, one's going to school in LA, I go to school in DC. You want to pick a location that outside of school you can enjoy yourself. School is very stressful, so it's easy for me to like find outlets in DC. So I would say that's what put Howard on the top of the list for me. And also I have family in the DC area, so that helped. But find a location where you can one go to school and one debrief when school is taking a toll on you.
For me, I like I said, I am a dual degree student, and around 14 dual degree programs. I'm not sure if anyone like is interested in it, but they're completely free. They pay for your dental school, pay for your PhD, and you get a stipend of like 40 grand a year. So it's very nice. And so for me, it was those schools that had that in place.
Yeah, for me, it was just living in a bigger city, like really diverse, good food. Yeah, close to a big airport.
Thank you. Yeah, so we're coming up to the hour, the end of the hour. And I did want to ask the four of you to just give one sentence of a big piece of advice or takeaway that you want to leave with our audience members here before we close out.
I would just say try to stay busy, productive, and yeah, just be yourself. I think the school really, or schools value authenticity, confidence. Yeah, that's my advice.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that. Be yourself, tell your story, and everything will happen the way you want to if you do those two things.
Yeah, I agree. I think that like you'll end up where you're supposed to end up. So yeah.
Thank you. Chonté, did you want to share anything before we close out?
Sure, make sure that you please read the Help Center of the application before completing it. It's there now. Don't wait till May 14th to look at your instructions. Make sure you reach out to your letter writer. Go ahead and craft a personal statement. And you know, it's always good to reach out. We have dental students here on the call today. So it's always good to get advice from your dental student. And don't forget about the admissions officer and your advisors. Your admissions officers, you can reach out to them at any time. You know, you might want to get to know them, and so they know who you are. So it's good to reach out to them and say, hello, I'm applying to your school, you know, just like a welcome and introduction. And you always want to look at your advisor for some help too.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. So, as I mentioned before, there's a wealth of knowledge and resources within our SHPEP alumni community, but also within ADEA as well. And so we didn't get a chance to answer everyone's questions, but we do have some of our panelists' email addresses being put into chat. So I invite them to put in their email addresses if they're interested. And then you can also reach out to Liz or myself as well at ADEA. If you have any questions. Chonté shared a support email address earlier. And then if you haven't done so already, like Chonté mentioned, make sure you go check out adea.org/GoDental for more information. And she also mentioned that there is that virtual fair coming up on May 21st. So you can go to that website and register for it there. Again, this is a collaborative effort within ADEA to put on this webinar, but we're hoping to be able to put on similar webinars in the future to highlight some of the other health professions pathways. So stay tuned for that. As SHPEP or SHPEP alums, we have the Alma-based platform. So if you're not a part of that already, it's our online community. Make sure that you join that. You can find the link to join that on the SHPEP website. You click under alumni. And I want to thank our presenters for joining us tonight, for sharing their insight and their wisdom and their experiences with us. There's many things that we could be doing on a Wednesday night, but we are here to provide a community of support. So I thank them for that. And I thank our audience members as well for joining us. We wish you the best of luck in your application journey. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions or if there's ways that we can provide support. We are here for that. And so thank you, everyone, and reach out if you need anything. But have a good rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.